Sometimes somebody waits for a lead. In some markets, it is government taking the lead. Then we see the private sector seeing government has taken the lead. In other markets, the private sector takes the lead in transforming and effecting change. So far, this uptake of e-mobility across all platforms, across the different four-wheeled, vehicles, motorcycles, scooters. I've used an electric scooter, quite interesting. How do we find the balance? What is the right spot to make sure that ignition, it catches fire as fast as it can? Is it government-led or private sector-led, or a merger of the two?
I think it does really depend on the type of vehicle and the sector that you're trying to address. But I will say that, I thought it was very apt, the Cabinet Secretary's comments earlier about how this is the change that is sweeping through the world. But actually, when I founded Ampersand, electric boda company, it was very much about why can't East Africa be the first, not the last? This is not some trickle-down, second-hand thing that arrives, laid, expensive products. It's because we're able to save our customers, our boda drivers who are hustling very hard right now, 45 to 50% of their running costs from day one. That includes the cost of financing the vehicle, but most of that comes from that imported fuel, that cost of that, for which we have to send that precious Forex abroad. So for us, it's not about some necessarily early adopters, and I think it's fantastic that Standard Media Group is taking that role as well. But we're really very much all about the masses, okay. And that's an exciting world first. I think we stand here in East Africa to beat out countries like Norway to have more than half of their entire road vehicle fleet electric.
Oh, that's quite encouraging, and that brings me up to Matatu sector, because I've seen, I work in a building around Kenyatta Avenue. There's that bus that comes from Upper Hill, very silent, very majestic. I was told it's an electric bus. I was like, I want that to use to go to Thika, where I live. So adoption of e-mobility in our Matatu sectors, Patricia, what will that take? Because I've seen quite a number have started picking up this concept. What will speed that uptake?
Thank you for that question. What will speed that up? Development of proper structures. I think Waziri summarized everything. What comes first before an investment? You can't start living before conception. It's a principle. It is. And when it's violated, definitely, it creates chaos. So what comes first? We put things in place. We put the right infrastructure in place, the rest will follow suit. Yeah, it's all about engineering. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good model. We welcome. There is no city that is static. That is the future. But what are the modes of transition? And how long will it take? It's good we've gotten the tidbit of how it will look. And I'm glad you acknowledge it's beautiful, it's quiet. Everyone wants that, quiet and beautiful. But do we have infrastructure in place? That is the biggest question. There are principles that we can't violate. There is what comes first, and then the rest follows suit. Okay. So let's see, I'll say. It's quite challenging, but we welcome the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that admission. It is quite challenging, but everything that is celebrated today, it was challenging at one point. Has the beauty of struggle. Jit, your second name was almost knocking me out, yeah? Beautiful name, but Acharya, yeah? Which is quite interesting, because with Basigo, you're making headlines. You're saying we can break into this transport system. And Patricia here says there are quite a number of challenges. From people who are pushing, and propagating e-mobility from your end, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing on the receiving side, the transport sector, which is now fuel-based, heavily fuel-based, is facing, and how are you trying to overcome that challenge?
Well, I definitely appreciate what Patricia is sharing, and yet whenever there is a challenge, especially in a transformative industry like this, there are people who are ready to rise to that challenge. And that's what I think I'm so proud of and what we are doing at Basigo right now. We don't believe the opportunity to make this transformation is 10 years from now. 10 years from now, as the Honorable CS was saying, it will be easy. This is going to be commonplace. These vehicles will be everywhere. The opportunity is right now, and this is where the private sector comes in to take on these challenges. There's another reason that the opportunity has to be now, and that is the climate crisis. When we replace one diesel bus here in Nairobi with an electric bus, we mitigate 50 tons of CO2 per year. That is more than a similar initiative in China, in India, in Europe, in the United States. We can lead the world in sustainable mobility. And if we're to actually face the climate crisis and do something about it, we can't wait 10 years.
Wow.
Now, the challenges, I definitely appreciate. But what we can do as a private sector is it comes down to, can we offer a better product at a better price? And if we do that, the magical thing about our public transport sector is that it's actually a private sector market. Unlike the rest of the world, where this is oftentimes driven by municipal governments and it's very slow to change, here, if we can come in with a better product at a better price, better for passengers, better for owners, especially owners who here in Nairobi have not had many choices for the last 20 years. They've been given the same choice of a fossil fuel-powered matatu for the last 20 years. If we can come in, give them a better product, one that's more reliable, one that saves them money. The greatest thing about working here in Kenya is you come in with a better product, we are a culture that is ready to adopt new technology and take the lead.
Okay, definitely better product, better value addition, and that is an incentive for people to take up. You've mentioned something very important about the climate, because that is why we are discussing these changes happening in the world. And I'm glad because Dr. Isaac Kalua Green, even your name itself and your tie, they're in sync. Even the socks, the CS has noticed the socks. They're in sync. I'm pretty sure the car that is parked outside there is also green. That's why I came with that one green, just to be in good books with you. But, sir, you know, looking at, you founded Green Africa Foundation, I mean, almost 20 plus years ago. This issue of climate change, how big an issue is it? Is this something, a crisis that some of us are not getting the reality of it per se, and even our contribution with some of these sectors that we're trying to transform and let them go green? How much of a crisis is this?
It is a tremendous crisis, and I choose to go the direction of Prophet Murkomen, who has just told us how much important it is to simplify all these issues so that people can move in one. It's very easy to talk about how complicated it is and how anthropogenic issues that we have caused by messing all this. And Waziri, I must thank you, because this has been my message all through, to simplify the challenges. We talk about food challenges that in our country, they are related to what we are calling climate change. We talk cost of living, we are talking about the issues that we are talking about climate change. And that is why I feel very proud seated here today. You may blame the government of the day today for many things because we are about blaming each other. But you cannot fault the government for the green move that it has taken. Having the building on what other governments have done to now have the Climate Change Council and issues that we have done in this. But let me bring it back to the issues on electric. I've used an electric car 100% for not less, may call it about a year, I can afford a cup of tea to buy you. I can afford to buy lunch for you because I have saved not less than 50% of what I would have used in my fuel. I have been to where I am going efficiently and without any stress, and have been able to deliver. Kenya today has about 2.5 million motorcycles. They are using 300 shillings per day on average. That is 750 million Kenya shillings. If there is a saving of 50%, you're talking of 350 million Kenya shillings daily. If you calculate that times 12 and the number of months that we have days, then you're talking of saving 136 billion Kenya shillings. If you divided that to the counties, you already have about 3 billion shillings that you can add to save activities that would save this country. This is the power of what we are talking about today.
Okay.
That is why an institution that I am part of, the Autoparks in Kenya and Honda, we are building a car, and it is supposed to be launched now in June, we thank God, deliberately for ladies and for the taxi, to save 50% or less, depending on the infrastructure and what the government has an opportunity to deal with.
Okay.
This is how important it is that we can be able to change, and people can be able to understand the language of climate change by practically showing them what puts food on their table through the saving.
All right. Wow. Can't wait for the launch. This one is just for ladies, yeah? I don't know, is it the nature of men?
Just because nature of men, and it's deliberate, Kenya is the biggest, highest user of SUVs, higher than Europe. We believe yes, higher than Europe in terms of big cars. Men in Kenya believe that the bigger the car, the more important you are.
And that
it's a good thing. And it was even a challenge for me to come from the big cars to a very tiny car. You'll find someone is struggling to pay 6,000 shillings worth of fuel in a space that I am going to pay 300 or 400 shillings.
That's true. Now I get the point, yeah? Men out there, if somebody is a man seated next to you, ask them, do you like a big car or you're about to change your mind?
And it's a Kenyan car. What is coming is 100%.
I know, that's why I came with that one. That's a big car but a small car at the same time, yeah? But I want to bring it, Bonasias. I know you talked very passionately about overcomplicating discussions, sometimes even in e-mobility. And you know, I do these, as we call them, down there, yeah? Almost on a daily. And this conversation about electric bikes or anything electric, it's not really resonating with the ground per se. How do we beat this, other than having such forums? How do we make it so relatable to a normal Kenyan, bring it so close to our people?
If you look at the current revolution in the country, as you've been told by the investors here, it has started with motorcycles, not motor vehicles. It started with motorcycles, the two-wheelers. And for sure, if you speak to all the border owners in Nairobi who have electric motor vehicles, electric motorcycles, they're very happy. Very, very happy. Why? Because, like Mr. Kalua said, it is they are saving. One thing people must know is that the initial cost of purchasing a motorcycle, and I wanted Jay to tell us, actually I would have loved to hear from him how much an electric bus costs. how much higher than a diesel bus. But that's the initial cost. But just imagine that when you buy the bus, however expensive it is, or the motorcycle, however expensive it is in the beginning, and if you have a good credit system, yeah, and that credit system supports you because they know if you are earning 300 shillings or spending 300 shillings to power your motorcycle, you are now saving that maybe 150 shillings. So they know you can afford to pay because you are saving. You see, so it's easy to finance the vehicle or the motorcycle because they know that you are capable of paying. So the thing is, we need to appreciate that, as I said, this is a revolution. But if you simplify to tell the motorcyclist and the association, and the SACCO chair was here, you tell them that by owning this, you combine an investor like him with a bank, with support of government policy, and you make sure that those SACCOs, the SACCOs that we have, are able to now procure the motorcycles on behalf of their members, and perhaps, with a plan on how to pay, knowing that they will save anyway, because then there is no servicing, there is no, changing oil and changing this and all that. So the initial cost may be expensive, but in the long run they benefit. As a result of that, once you put pesa mfukoni, there is no greater message that will be spread around than pesa mfukoni. If you can, as many people have money in their pockets as a result of saving these resources, then for sure, one, they benefit individually, but our country also benefits because we'll have more people who are saving. So this, as I said, this is a 1 year since this revolution started in this country. I can tell you for sure, I have no doubt in my mind that in the next 3 years, it will be a normal conversation to say, I am using an electric motorcycle and I'm using an electric motor vehicle, and these are the benefits and so forth. And I hopefully, the big men, the bigger the man, the bigger the car, will now be translated to mean that you are a bigger man because you're using an electric motor vehicle, notwithstanding the size of that vehicle, because of the cost you are going to save and the benefits you are going to translate to your family. Okay. I don't think it is fair for a country like ours to spend so much money in vanity and just having big vehicle for the sake of it. We can still have an opportunity to save and spend it in other sectors of the economy that can be able to translate to direct benefits to you, your family, and the country.
Yeah. The value proposition. If you benefit somebody in their pocket, if they have money, they're saving something, then that, it's quite an incentive. And Josh, the way we measure how serious your vehicle is in this country, we hit the bonnet. And depending on the sound that will emanate from that hitting, then it will tell. I know. Now, that's the thing now. And even before hitting the EV bonnets, because EV bonnets, they are empty, some of them, they have space, you can feel luggage and whatnot. But you guys have done on the motorcycle bit of it. What's the value proposition for people to uptake electric motorbikes?
Yeah, so the cost of the motorcycle itself is basically the same. It's within maybe 10,000, 15,000 shillings of all the popular motorcycle models that are out there, which is key. But the big thing is that most of our customers, they get financing packages. So we have some great partners like Watu Africa and Mkopa who provide loans. And as you mentioned earlier, they actually provide those loans on a lower cost, like lower interest rates. So that the net cost of the motorcycle is less, even on the finance payments, than the petrol motorcycle. But the real savings are from the energy cost, that's most of it, and then maintenance. But the total savings add up to 11,000 shillings a month.
Okay.
Which is a lot of money back in someone's pocket.
Yeah, for hustlers, as you put. And Patricia, that issue of value proposition, the e-mobility world, especially for the matatu sector, does it add up? looking at what they're proposing. The likes of Basigo, at least some of your members have taken some products from them. Are you getting feedback on those specific units? Are they making business sense?
I always want to comment on a point of knowledge, but at this point, I think I'll let the owner of Basco elaborate. But one thing that is sure, they are a bit costly. Okay? And again, when you look at the capacity, of course, there is the charging, there is the maintenance, but we're yet to quantify. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe might convince me
that's the beauty
why we should transition from what we have to electric e-mobility.
Mr. Jit, you know, some of us sit just behind the driver. That's where the engine is. Especially in this cold season, the engine is a little bit warmer, so it warms your feet. Okay? So, convince Patricia.
So this is going to be a sales pitch now, in real time. The idea of value proposition is everything, right? Ultimately, I have to be able to convince Patricia in the same way that we've convinced other Matatu operators already here in the city. It's everything. We were talking about cost. This is the biggest myth I think that we can go through and dispel. Everybody for so many years has thought that electric vehicles are too expensive for Africa. It's going to be later. Later we will transition to electric. And that's just not true. The upfront cost of the vehicle is more expensive. That is just the reality. 2 to 3 times as expensive. But on a monthly basis, a Matatu operator here in the city of Nairobi is spending 300,000 shillings on diesel fuel. By comparison, to use Kenya Power electricity to get the same number of kilometers is 50 to 60,000 shillings. 300,000 shillings versus 50 to 60,000 shillings. You can make up that higher cost on the upfront with the savings every single month. Mm-hmm. The key is, if you ask a Matatu owner to then come in, if I ask Patricia to come and say, please pay 2 to 3 times the cost of the vehicle, don't worry, you will make your money back, I promise. I have yet to meet a Matatu owner who's ready to take that deal, at least here in Kenya. So a core aspect of what we are doing as an industry is financing models to help make this affordable. And the financing is tied to the infrastructure as well, because the infrastructure is so important. The charging, the swapping of batteries for bodas. It has to be convenient, it has to be reliable, it has to be seamless. So in our model, what we're working to do is sell an electric Matatu, one of these silent, comfortable, high-tech Matatus for the same upfront cost as an existing diesel Matatu. We do that by financing the battery inside that Matatu separate. And in the process, they're paying for that almost in the same way they pay for diesel fuel. And it's actually 15 to 20% less than what they're paying for diesel fuel every single month. In this way, we make it cheaper for the owner.
Okay. Patricia.
That's my sales pitch. And our bus lasts longer. The target life is 8 to 10 years.
No, Waziri, we're yet to confirm that.
Yeah.
We're not sure, right? How long have you been in operation?
So we have had the first electric buses here in Nairobi operating since March of last year. The buses have driven over 200,000 kilometers in daily Matatu operation. They've carried 260,000 passengers, mitigated 95 tons of CO2, and avoided 38,000 liters of diesel imports. That is 1 year. I have 7 more years of proof, but I'm going to convince you before that 7 years.
Patricia, I like this back and forth. This is the reality of this conversation. Are you convinced?
Like I said earlier, yes, I'm convinced. But again, the initial capital, the initial cost, that is one. But again, Waziri mentioned, Kenya, we enjoy 92% of green energy. Mm-hmm. So if you're really serious about this issue of climate change, why are we not talking about conversion There is nothing impossible. We already have existing diesel engine. Okay? Why are we not talking about conversion?
Okay.
And then, I mean, it's not Greek. We definitely will utilize our 92% of green energy. So, like I said, what comes first?
It's a good question. Oziri, you wanted to point back before we got to Mr. Kama?
Yeah, just to respond to Patricia's question.
Okay.
Before we go, yes, let me respond to that one. First of all, we need to convince ourselves that we are doing the right thing by moving e-mobility, first of all, and convince ourselves as a country, like I said earlier, and I don't know how much my comments earlier were captured, but we need to look at the bigger, as a country, bigger issues, the bigger benefits. First, like Isaac said about the benefits of climate change. What are we going to save? How are you going to mitigate these carbon emissions? And then what are we going to benefit in terms of globally access to resources that are given to countries that have been able to reduce their carbon emissions by this much? So what benefit comes globally to the country? We need to know that the benefit of going e-mobility is beyond just the individual Matatu beneficiary. It is going to benefit the country. If we are going to reduce the number of respiratory diseases and make Nairobi again get out this haze that we have in Nairobi, how many billions, and I'm sure that can be quantified, are spent in the Nairobi city, for example, alone, in dealing with respiratory diseases to treat people who end up having asthma and having other diseases that are affecting them. We need to know how much, for example, if we are going to reduce the number of e-vehicles by half, how much fuel are we going to save? And therefore, how many foreign exchange are we going to save? We will be consuming our own energy. We will not depend on somebody in Middle East and other parts of the world to give us fuel in this country. And how much dollars are we going to save? And therefore, what does it translate to the economy? For example, if you ask the DGs who are sitting here, road maintenance. We maintain roads because we have something called road maintenance fuel, which comes from a charge from the diesel and petrol that we are going to use. But I keep saying, even if we reach a stage where this money will be reduced because 100% of the country is e-mobility, if we are not importing fuel in this country, we can finance maintenance of our roads from our exchequer. Because the greatest drain of our resources is the purchase and import of fuel. It will mean that the export of our tea and export of our coffee and other products and horticultural products, the dollars that we receive are able to keep our economy high, and we can finance maintenance of our roads without depending on this fuel. So there is a bigger benefit. And if we are conscious then as a country that there is a greater benefit that comes to the nation more than the question of the cost, the initial cost of the buses, now we go to the next question. How do we organize ourselves in such a way that we will make sure that our public transport sector is run by private sector, but in a way that they can access credit at a lower rate to enable them to meet the initial cost, and then in the long run, save their cost. This is what we are doing in the ministry. Through NAMATA, Nairobi Metropolitan Area Authority, we are planning to have this bus rapid transit system in Nairobi. We're working with all the road agencies here to work on the infrastructure, especially Kura and then NAMATA itself. Our plan is that we have about 5 lines. Line one is the, Mombasa Road. We have the Thika Road, which is line 2. We have Dandora, line 3, and so forth. Our plan is to provide the infrastructure. If you saw, I was the ambassador of Germany is here. I was with the president in Germany 3 weeks ago, and we went to European Union and we signed some financing that is going to be given by European Union to help us develop line 3, a good amount of resources. And we believe that in that line 3, we are going to move 300,000 passengers per day. And from that movement of those 300,000 passengers, we are going to reduce carbon emissions. We are going to make sure that that infrastructure now will bring in private sector. There is no business for the current matatus to continue operating in the manner in which they do. They will now buy the electric vehicles. Through a financing model, we will be able to work with the banks and the private sector. They will use the infrastructure developed by government, and they can partner with foreign investors, and the current matatu doesn't have to remain the current matatu as it is. So we're going to do two things. One, we will have moved our matatu system to more organized, in a BRT system that is more organized. But number two, we will also organize now the matatu sector to have buses that are clean, buses that have space, buses that have cameras inside, buses that have a system that can monitor the driver, so speed monitoring can be monitored from a command center. So we hope that using this revolution, and I call it revolution because every generation, when new idea comes in, when we moved from firewood to diesel, and now moved from diesel to now we are moving to electricity and so forth. All this transition had certain impact in the transport sector. Mm-hmm. I believe that the e-mobility revolution will be the catalyst for organizing our public transport system.
Okay.
And it will lead to a more organized transport system by default. The real thing is that we are dealing with e-mobility. But because there is a certain investment that comes with it, it will give us an opportunity. Then, my friend here, Honorable Patricia here, with his team, will now have an opportunity to invest clean, in a clean energy, in e-mobility, but also the investment will be more organized.
Okay.
You know, the current one is very chaotic because sometimes the matatu industry, the owner of the matatu will have to give someone his vehicle and tell them, I want this much this per day. They don't know how much that person will make for as long as they get a certain determined figure that they have agreed. But now you have an investment that you can optimize in your investment. You will have opportunity to employ more people. We will now have an opportunity for our people to travel safe. And we will have also a safer country in terms of carbon emissions. So I think the fears that the sector have would come in if we were going to create a monopoly, okay, big investors, big people who come in and then they run these systems and age out these other people and chase them from the sector. That is not the intention of our ministry, and it's not the intention of our country. Ours is bottom up. The idea is we want to facilitate the same people who are currently running the transport system to move to e-mobility and to move to a more organized transport system. That way, we are going to change this country.
Sir, small comment. Patricia has raised the issue of conversion because that seems very convenient.
Sorry, I forgot to respond to that. Yes, fantastic. Mm-hmm. I am not an expert in that area, but having the conversation with the experts and the people who are investing in this area, they are saying, I had a conversation with one of the potential investors in this area, and they were saying that, people are now looking at it. We have millions of vehicles in the country. Mm-hmm. People are moving to EV. There are certain investors who are now looking at the opportunity to come and set up a plan in the country for bringing batteries and converting vehicles from the current to EV. That is an opportunity for investment. As I said, it's not government, it's ours to provide the incentives. Mm-hmm. If I were Patricia, the next thing I'll be thinking now is to say, a number of vehicles will almost go obsolete. People will run away from this diesel thing. What are other people doing all over the world? And what strategic investors can we attract from other countries? And I become among the first people now sourcing these investors and saying, come to Kenya, come and set up a plan. We'll provide for you the infrastructure. The government of Kenya is working on the incentive. You have an opportunity to convert 1 million buses to electric. And therefore, every such opportunity creates room for us to make money. And there's nothing wrong to make money. The people who are already in that sector, in this transport sector, should think about running the current as it is, moving to e-mobility, and conversion as part of the investment. And as I said, those who take the early risk always make the highest amount of money before those of us who like familiarity come in 10 years.
All right. I think you've raised very important points. Bonasias, are we having you the whole session, or we're supposed to let you go? Beautiful, beautiful. For a few more minutes, yeah? Dr. Isaac, you know, you gave a personal testimony, and you talked about using an EV for almost a year or so. And I mean, you're part of Honda, Kenya, and they say every car ahead of you is always a Honda. Yes. I've got you there. You got me. But the whole point, I think it has been raised a very important point. This issue of already vehicles that we have. Because I've seen there is a hybrid system which has become very popular, which is balancing the two worlds. And now we want to go fully e-mobility. Is there a provision for the current vehicles to be totally turned to, you know, electric vehicles, that conversion aspect? Because it seems very convenient from my point of view.
It is a very good option. It's a workable option. The challenge comes in on the type of batteries to be used, because in electric vehicles, a used car or an electric vehicle, the type that we are making is got about 15 years before you dispense off and change the battery. There are others that are much shorter. There are other batteries that are not good for the environment, the management of the battery. And therefore, I'm the most excited person tonight when our CS says that they're working together to bring out the policy, the direction on what needs to be done. So there needs to be control, because it can also be a very serious environmental hazard. Where do you take a vehicle that has been imported, it has already been used for 8 years, it only has 2 years or 3 years to go, and then after 2 years, it's not like any other engine that you can do anything. So it becomes a very serious hazard. This is something that will only come out in the policy and can be able to be guided accordingly. And the issue that we talked about earlier on, about the cost, is something that as Autopax we took a lot of time working with engineers from Germany. Thanks, the ambassador is here, with engineers from Italy, and eventually combined it with the global leader in electric vehicles, and that is China, to understand how we can bring down the cost. And this is where we need to really try and work on, because we found that we must not build a factory, an Autopax factory. We can work with existing factories here in Kenya. And therefore, we combined forces with KVM. So we are working with them so that the vehicle is produced from there. We are now on a very important phase with numerical machining so that we can start doing the parts locally and we can produce the same. And then we are working with existing stations, companies that are doing servicing of the vehicle, so that we don't have to spend so much money on capital. And our intention is to have a vehicle that is going to cost an electric car at about 1 million shillings. We are still on that journey. We are going to have a very good solution, 300 kilometers for a taxi car. And you can imagine if a taxi man can save up to 300 shillings, up to 50% of what they are spending. And you can imagine, and that is why we are saying, ladies, men, we are still coming. Your vehicle is coming, no problem. But interestingly, we now have 69 orders ahead of time, even before we launch. And interestingly, about 22 are men. out of that. So it's not too bad. We are looking forward to working with them.
And Dr. Isaac, you know what? Make it 70. Because Patricia will take one, yeah?
Perfect.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that we really need to deal with, and that is why I really commend the minister and the government in what they're doing. A country like Rwanda has put their vehicles, electric and any accessories related, at 0%. In Kenya, you have to pay 25% plus an additional 10% depending on what it is. So you can imagine all that money, even if our intention was to get to the 1 million mark, we cannot make it. Mm-hmm. So Kenyans are still going to have it at slightly higher, but I'm sure that the minister, in the way that they are working, they are going to be able to do that. The initial cost being in consideration, maybe at about 1.6, 1.8 million Kenya shillings. And if the duty is lesser, then Kenyans can easily afford this. But to answer your question, yes, it's doable, but we need to do it. You can imagine how much trash, let me use that word, on solar, obsolete items that have been brought in this country, dumped because it is under the name of solar. 6 months, 3 months along the lane, it's not working. Mm-hmm. Because there is no control, there is no quality control, there are no standards. People are not following standards because Kenya Bureau of Standards is doing a very good job in all this space. But because it is solar, the name of solar, there is a lot of dumping. There is a lot of obsolete things, and I think what the minister has said is what will sort us out going in the future. Because this is not new technology. Countries in Europe are already doing 80%, 90%. US and other countries are already giving tax incentives that are helping in all that. Kenya is the host of UNEP. Can you imagine UNEA and what we can be able to do? Yes. The first country that is going to take that leap is going to harness very big time. And with after the African arrangement in trade, mm-hmm. It's going to be a very, very big opportunity.
Definitely.
And we are looking at an opportunity of creating jobs that this country has never seen.
Incredible.
If we take this route.
Incredible. That's good. Josh, you know, we always, I don't know, it's a thing with Kenya and Rwanda, yeah? The comparisons. You know, you don't know this shoe, but in Rwanda, this shoe, you know, that kind of comparison, we get that a lot. And I'm glad you're doing business in Rwanda. At the same time, you're doing business here in Kenya. Are there areas that we can learn, especially those concerns that are being raised by the people using these products, the issue of initial cost? You want me to get close to 200,000 to get a motorcycle that I can use? So how can you compare the two environments, and what can we learn from each other to make sure that locally we are having more electric bikes?
So in Rwanda, we worked closely alongside the government, and the government was very interested to see what benefits this could have. But I would say that the policies that were, firstly, the policies that were enacted were very, very helpful. The biggest one was the electricity tariff. That tends to be moves the needle the most for EVs, both boda bodas and for buses as well. So that's a big one to look at, but there are ways to work with that. Then input duties and VAT. Also incentivization for local manufacturing. We actually build our battery packs in Rwanda. Next year we'll start doing that in Kenya as well. That's pretty unique. I mean, the EV battery pack is the most high value component. And I think a big part of it is also traction. So seeing that the vehicles, we sold our first motorcycle in Rwanda in May of 2019. We were the first company in Africa to put an electric two-wheeler on the road in this boda boda class, and those motorbikes from May 2019 are still on the road 4 years later. And so just showing that track record, showing now we have 900 motorbikes on the road, they run nearly 4 million kilometers every single month. That just puts the proof in, the proof is in the pudding, as it were. It's not just about, there's a lot of excitement and some hype, and we're all very excited, but for sure for Boda Boda drivers, it definitely matters to see, this person has been running on this not just for 1 week and is happy, but for 2 years, 3 years and is happy. So looking over towards, if we can get a delegation of Boda drivers to come over to chat to our customers there, maybe that will help speed things up. But actually, in the very early days in Rwanda, we were really surprised by how quickly people, Boda drivers, would adopt the bikes. And a Boda driver in Rwanda is not that different from a Boda driver in Kenya. Yes, there are differences and preferences, and one of the flat seat here in Kenya. But by and large, we had, let's see, now in the first 6 weeks of just putting some bikes on the road, we had 1,300 drivers come and find us. We were just keeping our heads down, not making any press releases. But what the problem was that the customers, our first customers, every time they stopped somewhere, every time they were by the side of the road, 30 people would walk up and start asking questions, including other Boda drivers. And then the end of our first customer said, look, this is really great, but can you print us out some flyers so we can hand them out and give them the website so they can get more information, because I've got to get on with my work because the level of interest is so high. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. For us, we've definitely, we came in, initially we thought we could get away with a smaller number of swap stations. Nairobi is much larger, and actually drivers do travel around the city more than we initially thought, and so we've been aggressively rolling out the number of swap stations.
Okay.
But that seems to be the main limiting factor. We're getting very close to, I think, really unlocking all of the final barriers.
Definitely.
Allow me to interrupt this for just a minute. He was explaining to our very able minister earlier on that in Kenya he has 1,000 bikes. In Rwanda he has 8,000 bikes. I think that sums up what policy can do.
Definitely.
1,000 and 8,000.
8,000.
Yeah.
1,800, but yes.
Yeah. Josh, being very modest, yeah? Yeah? Not like, the minister is here, the cabinet secretary. I don't want to make Kenya look bad, but I think every journey has a beginning, which is very important from where we're coming from. I'm going to get a commentary from, because Patricia, actually, majority of this session has been responding to some of your concerns because you are on the ground with people we need to convince to, go fully electric. Yeah, and I'm glad some of it has been responded. That issue of conversion, it seems, if I'm in Malaba border, yeah, just being shown a way of, I can turn this matatu that I already have and make it electric. And you're talking about some of the deals that can be made there. From a sector player perspective, conversion and balancing off with getting a new matatu, factoring in all those aspects that Jita has brought up, initial cost is very expensive, but it will provide financing, and in the long run, you get to save money. From a sector player perspective, how do you process all this?
I think the explanation is just straightforward. Conversion. We'll be dealing with climate change, and also introduce another market of consuming our own green energy, if really the issue is about climate change. The answer is self-explanatory, and I'm glad there is an opportunity to convert, because the universe is on the red. How many years will this take before all this matatu exits the stage? 20 years? 10 years? Will the climate wait for us? Will it? Will it?
Yep.
So which is the easiest way out? First, we deal with the existing disease, which is influx of diesel vehicles. Then, slowly by slowly, start the transition of, getting the electric vehicle. We are not objecting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, change is inevitable. But how do we deal with the existing problem? I think that should be our question. If really, really, really the agenda is about climate change.
Good question. I can see in your eyes, Mr. Jit, really thinking about this, right? And even as you think about it, I know there are quite a number of people, because already we are 1 hour in, and I'd like us to slowly transition into the Q&A. So if you have a question, I'll request you to just raise your hand. I request that you be straightforward. Please don't tell us your history, where you're born, okay? Just the question and to whom it's directed to. Starting with your name, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Ignatius Maranga, an engineer and researcher at Strathmore University. So my question is directed to the entire panelists, specifically the CS, of course, Basigo, Ampasan. So, I concur with the sentiments from the CS that, countries that are ahead because of, listening to ideas. Now, given that fact, academia is mainly concerned with, research and dissemination of this information. So is it possible to involve academia more in research and getting these ideas across? Because that is the main role of academia in developing these technologies, right? So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. The involvement of academia, funding research, that's been a discussion for a very long time. Another question? I think we'll take a number, then we answer, then take another batch. Sir?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gerald Chengo. I'm a PSV operator. Mine goes more to the Cabinet Secretary. It's more about the infrastructure of this country. When you say that you have partners coming up, I'd like to just ask, is there really a land policy in this country for when you do roads? I operate on Wayaki Way. The other day you brought in the expressway, removed all our stages. Will there be a proper planning, land acquisition? You want to bring the BRT, how will it operate if we already have a problem now? That's number one. Number two, in terms of the electric bus, we in the Matatu sector, especially in my route Wayaki Way, we want the bus. We're happy and glad the other day you put up a charging station in Kikuyu, but we'll still go back to what comes to the most expensive component of this bus, which is the batteries. Cabinet Secretary, I think if you talk with Moses Kuria, it would be nice, as Kenya being one of the big leads in East and Central Africa, can we have a plant to build those batteries here to bring down the cost of the batteries?
Okay.
I concur with Daktari here. Also, please remove those VAT and everything. Okay. It's policy. You're having a meeting next week. Kindly, that would be very nice.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Let's build our batteries inside this country. The gentleman behind the lights. Do you have ladies, by the way, in the building? Do you have any questions from the ladies? Okay, let's continue with testosterone.
Thank you. Kwa majina naitwa Eli Kegode Edenye, sub-county chairman wa Kibra kwa wanabodaboda. Kitu yenye mmetuletea hii e-mobility, tunaisupport 100% because tumeumia pale nje, na tunaomba hii e-mobility ya motorbike, kwa sisi tuko kwa motorbike, tunataka tukue sisi wenyewe tunajichajia, because mtu akikwama Wayaki Way kukimbiziwa hiyo battery inakuwa hectic, na saa zingine uko na customer. Tukue na chargers pale kwa stages zetu, inaweza kuwa inatusaidia. Na tena nitaomba waziri wa barabara, kuna potholes mingi kwa barabara. Hizi e-mobility hazipiti kwa hiyo mapotholes. Kwanza kwangu pale Kibra, mapotholes ni mingi sana.
Yes.
Na tena nashukuru kwa kikao ya leo. Lakini sisi watu wa pikipiki Mmetusahau mama mboga na mtu wa pikipiki, mmetusahau.
Yes, sir.
Tunaomba uombe president akumbuke hawa watu wa motorbike na mama mboga.
Okay.
Alafu tena tunaomba kazi kutoka tena kwako hapo.
Okay.
Mpaka tuombeko kazi.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mkikaa kwa hii kikao, mnakaa tu wadozi pekee. Hao watu wa masikini amweki hapo. Mtatuweka siku gani? Alafu saa hii ni uchungu, tuko na kiongozi wa bodaboda amekaa hapa, lakini akai huku mbele. Ni ishara gani twende kuambia wengine? Mmetuweka kwa matata. Hiyo maswali mtujibu, kwa sababu tukienda huko nyumbani hatujui tunaenda kujibu nini. Mtujibie hiyo. Asanteni.
Sawa sawa. Asante. CS Murkomen, portals zimezidi, battery inaweza anguka itoke kwa mshindwe, mbona ipandi, you know? It's trying to accelerate, it's not doing that.
First of all, let me say this. I think maybe I should respond and then I leave my seat for the boda chair.
Better.
So that it can at least raise a few issues they have. First, let me say this. Infrastructure. What was that? Involve what?
The academia.
Academia, yes.
Yeah.
That is, you read my mind, you know. This morning I had a meeting with senior management of the ministry and we agreed that, and I have told them over and over again, we want to have a closer partnership with the academia. I told the ministry today that we need to see bids from the university for tenders that we advertise. And when you say from the university, it's not from the university professors. University of Nairobi Enterprises or University of JKUAT or whichever. We want to give work to university as an entity to come and do some of the things we do. If we are advertising for consultancy, for engineering consultancy, I would be very happy to see the School of Engineering of Nairobi University winning a bid in Kenya and being given that tender to do it as the university, because it has an advantage of, one, raising money for the university, paying the professors better, but also moving to help the students who are perhaps in the final year to get a good experience. In fact, believe it or not, the task force on e-mobility, I'll be launching it in one of the universities. Yeah, and it will have a representative from the university, not a professor I picked from the university, but I'll write to the university itself to give me a person who will sit in the task force. So my belief, because as a former university lecturer, I always believe that we are lacking behind as Kenyan universities in terms of involving ourselves in market research as a university. But our professors are doing well, the lecturers, everybody's doing well individually. But we want to start supporting university, so that we don't have the problem we have with Egerton University today, Moi University, and a number of the universities that are struggling financially. We want to give work to the university, and I hope e-mobility and this sector will be the one way of doing so. Infrastructure, somebody's asking where will the infrastructure come from? If you Google BRTs all over the world, even if you Google Jakarta or wherever, BRTs are supposed to be in the main road, just beside the main road. So if you go to Thika Road, the plan is to have it along the Thika Road. And because we are moving many people, for example, the Dandora line, if we're moving 300,000 people in a day, we will reduce the ones who will be in the rest of the road. So we will not continue needing many lanes, because the bigger population is being moved. If we had a train system, a more well-connected light rail system, we would even move more people and reduce the number of cars. The number of cars we have at the moment is because many people don't trust the public system. They don't believe the public transport system is safe, convenient, well-timed. A BRT system, the bus will move. If it reaches the stage, in 2 minutes it has moved, in another 2 minutes it has moved, so you can time where you are going at any particular time. We hope that we can be able to bring in that kind of order in our country, and the system that we put in place will help us. Yes, I agree with you. We must have a plan to build batteries, but we must do it as private sector. You know, we are still confined in this mentality of Serikali's idea. Even from a private sector perspective, I'm still saying Serikali's ideas is in a plant. I agree with you. We need to deal with the incentives. That is the role of government, the taxes, the system that is put in place. But let us take advantage as private sector. Go and look for that company that has batteries and come and establish it yourself and make money and employ people, because that is the work of private sector. The public sector will do its own incentives. Fiscal incentives, I agree. Let the task force come up with what the fiscal incentives will need in place. Let the task force come up with the charging points and the charging infrastructure. Let's agree. In areas, forget about Nairobi. Nairobi is near to electricity. But outside Nairobi and other parts of the country where we don't have proper electric processes, what infrastructure is going to be put in place and who is going to do it? Another opportunity for private investment to work with Kenya Power, to work with power companies for you to provide charging infrastructure along the highway. This is going to be a new centers of business for Kenyans who want to invest in this area. I have to deal with dumping. I believe slowly as we move forward, and I hope the task force will make a recommendation on this. I think now, from the 8 years of vehicles we import to the country, we can move to zero, to say all diesel vehicles and the like, we import only new to the country, and we only import only new electric vehicles to the country. Because progressively, as you deal with these dumping issues, you reduce the number of years that you can import an older second-hand vehicle. That is the only way. And if you do so, you must also put in place incentives to set up assembling plants for vehicles to be from your own country. As you know, South Africa, they don't allow importation of used vehicles. And if you want to progress the ladder in terms of assembling and manufacture, you have to deal with the number of years that you can allow vehicles to be sent. The last thing I want to say is that for the gentlemen in the border sector, I agree that we need to deal with our portals, but across the country, it's not just Kibera alone. Where we have portals, we've been working very hard to ensure that these roads are maintained. Your comments are at the right place because the road agency MDs are sitting here and they know that we've been working hard to maintain our roads. And I think we've done very, very good. In fact, in terms of maintaining our roads, I think that's one area that we have really improved. And we just gave out the tender for the road, the 27 kilometers of the road, the Mombasa road, all the way up to Wayaki. And the contractors are now on site. They will sort out all the problems that we have been having of drainage, of portals, of everything that we may have in that area. Okay. But I don't agree with you that on this issue of you are saying we are in the border sector, but we are asking for employment. Border sector itself is the employer. The thing that we must do as a sector is to make what we are talking about here about making the electric vehicles cheaper, making sure that we have incentives for people to acquire the motorcycle, is to promote that sector. That is the employment. That is your job creators. Until we believe that we are giving you an electric motorcycle to instead now save an extra 11,000, like Josh was saying here, 11,000 in a month that can go to your private investment as a person. That is employment. There are very few jobs in the country that can make you save that 11,000 in a month plus the one you are saving already. Meaning perhaps you double your income to about 20,000. If electric vehicles is going to make a border guy to be able to save this money, you should be saying, from a government perspective, we need to partner with investors like Josh and others to deliver more electric vehicles with more charging points and make it easier for you to do your business in a way that you save money. So that, white-collar jobs, in fact, there is no better conversation to have than when the sector to pull you from what you're doing to go and employ you in a white-collar job. There are only about 800,000 civil servants who will employ the millions of Kenyans that are in place if we don't make the business environment safe. That's why Hustler Fund was important to that sector for Mama Mboga. Okay. That's why it's important to have this sector for these e-vehicles. I believe, and allow me to use this platform for only one thing. now that we are talking about border sector, the greatest threat to national stability at the moment is the safety of the border riders and their passengers. Road accidents in the country, the border sector is leading in a very fast rate. We are losing riders and their passengers. And we need the support of the border sector for you also to infuse safety. Wear your helmet. Make sure that your passenger is wearing a helmet. At the moment, border is the second after private vehicles. The matatu sector is number 3 in causing accidents. I see people on social media keep telling me, you need to sort out this public transport system and accidents. The highest causes of accidents actually are private vehicles, then followed by the border.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I really want to request is that even as we talk about this immobility, I hope that the border sector can lead by example, by valuing your own life before you want government to protect your life.
Definitely. Very important. Patricia? Buenos, you want to leave? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe
Yeah,
before Waziri.
before he leaves. No. Before he leaves, I love the way he's been observant. But my question is this: how well are our investors protected? When we speak about public transport, it's one of the key enhancer of economy in this country. And I don't think it should be taken lightly. And for us to reduce road carnage, then proper trainings should be put in place. Doctors have KMTC. Police have their own institution for training. Teachers have Teachers Training Institute. I always want to look at public transport as the third parent of this nation. How safe are we when we leave the mandate of driving school to private investors? And we all know what happens. Where is the government in this? Because again, you just can't push this important function to be run by private sectors. Where are we? There is a regulation. We must put a regulation. Because this is a sector that ferries masses. Per day, we ferry over 2 million passengers. 2 million passengers every day. Their lives are at their mercies of a person who is not well certified, I might say.
Sure.
So, as a ministry, Waziri, I think this is a challenge. We either set up one institution that caters for the licensing. The boda guy, ni vizuri naona chairman hapa. Watu wangapi mnaenda training ile ya mrengo? That is the question, number one. Matters road safety, which is key. We lose a lot of lives. So, Waziri hapo mkitusaidia, I think tutakuwa tunaenda vizuri.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you've mentioned that. It's 10 minutes to 9, yeah? And I know we have a lot of questions still, but in the spirit of broadcast, because we are live on KTN News, all this discussion back and forth, we've been having it on KTN News, and we want to take a break from that. But the conversation still continues here. So, of course, Transform Kenya. And our topic today has been touching on climate change, sustainable transport, and e-mobility. And you've seen the back and forth, the nuances. But most importantly, the key word is, it is possible. And hopefully from this conversation, it's made e-mobility relatable. In your do the business, now you're thinking, okay, if If I get an electric bike, can I save some money in your taxi business? Is it something that I can consider in your matatu business? Well, that is the value proposition. And the discussion doesn't stop here. It's something that continues. Let us engage in our stages to make sure that this e-mobility gospel reaches to many people. But at this particular moment, I'd like to let you, our viewers, thank you very much for joining with us. I'll let you go right here at Barabara Plaza. We are continuing with this discussion because it's a sensitive one. In fact, we've just entered on the issue of road safety, which is more touchy. But I'll let you go. My name is Nokip Kimboy. We have a powerful panel, of course, Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport, Kipchumba Murkomen, and the rest of the guests, beautiful people, including a representative of the border sector, so that the gentleman cannot say I didn't mention him. We recognize border.